Hello and welcome everyone to this session of Astro Beginners. This session is the first in the Astro Beginners series and is meant for true beginners. So that is who this is geared towards. If you already have this information, there are other videos available on my YouTube channel that might be better suited for you. In this one, we are going to do a very basic introduction and then start to unpack the different pieces included in the natal chart by looking at the big three: the sun, the moon, and the rising sign. And we start here with beginners because there's a lot to the natal chart, as we're going to look at, but it's really a process that has to be one bite at a time. And these three influences in your natal chart are said to be the most dominant influences. So it's a great place to start to understand kind of what it all means. And so we're going to take a step back and look at more the spiritual side of astrology. Me personally, that's very much where I resonate, and I'm realizing now I haven't introduced myself. Hi, I'm Carly Whorton, and I love astrology. I've been studying it for a little less than a year, and these are very much the questions that brought me down the path of unfolding that eventually led to me seeing my natal chart for the first time. Who am I and why am I here? This is something that has been my focus my whole life, it feels like. And it feels like last summer I was really, really ready to come face to face with who am I and why am I here. I was very ready to know the answers to those questions. And I could feel that it was getting close to me getting to know those answers. And then one day it clicked. I had wanted to work with a life coach for several years. I've been to many, many therapists back in the day, many therapists. But I had always, like, once I kind of like graduated therapy, like I felt good enough that I didn't feel like I needed to do that anymore. I kind of changed to wanting a life coach. You know, I still really liked having someone to bounce myself off of and get clarity and kind of find out, how am I standing in my own way? How could I be better at being who I was born to be? So I decided to invest a little chunk of money in hiring a life coach. And when I asked my friends for recommendations, my one friend pointed me in the direction of Melissa. She is my life coach or has been for the last year anyway. And she is the very first one who showed me my natal chart. She uses the natal chart to connect women mostly with their divine purpose, their divine feminine, and the reason that they're here. And it just felt like utter perfection clicking into place when I met her and when she very first showed me my natal chart. And that's basically the story that she told me, was that, you know, we all have a reason for being here. She believes, and I was very thrilled to find out that she believes, because I also believe that we all chose our starting point. We chose our entry point into this life, meaning the date and the time and the family and the soul family that we were born into. We had a unique reason for coming forward at the time that we did. And the natal chart is a snapshot of what that energetic purpose that imprinted on you at your birth, what that looks like. So as she's telling me this story, I just get more and more and more excited at the depth of knowledge that must be here in this like treasure trove of clarity about who I really am. Very, very excited to have stumbled upon it. And as you try to take it all in, all of the different pieces of it, it's obviously instantly overwhelming. There's so much to the natal chart output itself. And that's why I was personally really glad that I had chosen to invest in a guide and someone who could help me break it down and help me focus on it in a way that wasn't productive, or that was productive, that wasn't overwhelming. So that's what this video is for, is like, if you don't have the resources to invest a big chunk of money in a life coach to help you learn natal charts, that's cool. I totally get it. So this is kind of a starter kit for being able to do it yourself. So obviously I won't know everyone's exact placements and all of that, but what I'm going to show you is the process that you can look at your own natal chart and try to start unpacking it and all of the depth of wisdom that is waiting there for us. Another way that she described it was that it's our own unique blueprint. Like, you think about basically what it is a snapshot of the sky at the time of your birth. So when we look at the wheel, the natal chart, and I think I was actually going to get into this a little bit later, but that's okay. When we look at the wheel, it's a snapshot of all the planets and the sun and the moon and everything that was in the sky when you were born. It's exactly a map of where it all was. And based on all of that, there's a lot we can understand about your unique energy and the way that each of us is individually wired and what we came forward to do. I like to think about it like, when I look at a natal chart, it's like opening the lid to somebody's personal toolbox, energetic toolbox, and looking at what tools do you have with you that you brought. And, you know, as we look at all of those different tools, we can start to understand what kind of job did you expect to be doing when you got here. You know, a lot of times, and I've felt this personally for a really big part of my life, um, sometimes we feel out of place, like our energy is bad or wrong or overwhelming, or we're a victim of our energy or our emotions. um, that life just doesn't work and it's just frustrating. And I have to say, like, it's when we're walking somebody else's path, you know, like when we're walking our own unique divine path, our energy feels like we were fucking born for this. So if that's not how you feel, I can't stress enough that there are answers in your natal chart that could help you to lean towards the path that you meant to walk. um, Obviously it's a process. It's a long process. I've been studying astrology for almost a year and I'm by no means done. There's layers and layers and layers of information that comes as part of your natal chart output. I personally find it fascinating that with only your birthday, the year, the time, and the location of your birth, of where you entered your physical vessel, that we can basically decode how your energy is wired, how your personality works. Um, I've taken a lot of personality tests, and people's number one thing is like, that test means nothing because you can tell it whatever you want. Well, you can't change your birth information. It is what it is. So the fact that it's so accurate and so easy to pull, it instantly caught my attention. And that's where I've done a lot of sessions around astrology and putting the information out there in a way that people can connect to it. Um, Without investing a big chunk of money, because not everybody has access to that, and I totally get it. So this is another one that I have that's already available on my YouTube channel, and I'll link in the description of this video if you want to hop over to Astro 101. It's 2 hours of like how to actually like pick all of this apart and understand like, what do each of these pieces tell you. Obviously there's a lot to it. So for 2 hours, I go through like step by step by step, how do you actually understand what you're looking at well enough to be able to do your own research. Um, that's not what we're here to do. We're going to skim through the the big three: the sun, the moon, and the rising. Ooh, what is the name of your YouTube channel? Owning Authenticity is my brand. So that is where you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, like on and on and on. I'm everywhere with Owning Authenticity. So that's kind of how I summarize my spiritual practice. Um, and it's also my intention for connecting and working with others as a spiritual coach or reflector, is to help people lean into owning their authentic self, which is obviously a whole bigger process of facing who we are and the fears that go along with that. And yeah, so owning authenticity. Thank you for asking. Okay, so this is probably my main takeaway. If you walk away with anything, remember this. You can pull any natal chart you want for free. You can have access to as many natal charts as you care to pull. And I'm going to show you how to do that for free. So if somebody is saying that they want to sell you your natal chart, back away slowly, because that's not real, or at least you don't have to do that. If you want to pay a professional astrologer to meet with you and go through your chart with you, that's what I did to get started. I offer that service. It's available. But if someone just wants you to pay so that they can send you a natal chart, that's not real. Google free natal chart. The very first thing in the search results is Cafe Astrology, and it's not only just the chart, but it's a whole report, like a 20-page report that you don't really have to understand what all the natal chart pieces are to understand. Like, it gives you a paragraph about the personality or the energy for each of those pieces. So that is really easy to digest, especially if you're just starting out. Once you get going a little bit and you want to pull a bunch of natal charts, then you switch over to My Astro, because it keeps a list of all of the charts like in your directory. So astro.com, I always call it My Astro. That's my bad, because that's what the little link is called that you click on once you get there. But to actually search the website, it's astro.com. Free to log into, and there is a ton of options in there once you get going as far as pulling natal charts and looking at them for yourself. Okay, so this is where we're going to start, and we're going to ignore everything that's happening on the left-hand side of the screen, and we're only going to look at the circle, the wheel. Okay, so if you look around the very outside of the wheel, all 12 of the zodiac signs are represented. Each zodiac sign is 30 degrees, and that is like, if you look at, let's say, Pisces here. So this goes from Pisces 0 degrees to Pisces 29 degrees and 59 minutes. Doesn't ever actually reach 30, because then you're at 0 degrees Aries. So each sign is 30 degrees, adds up to 360 degrees, and that makes a circle, AKA that's why we call it the wheel. So the wheel has all of the zodiac signs present. And the conclusion from this is that, here's another big takeaway, is that we are all 12 energies. So we're not only our sun sign. You know, I was born June 19th, so that makes me a Gemini. I'm not just a Gemini. I have facets of all 12 of the zodiac archetypes within me, and so do you. That's how I believe it anyway. And I have a whole nother video, I'll link this one in the description too, that is purely going in depth into the 12 zodiac signs. So that's a good one if you want to try to lean into this, that like you have access to all 12 of these. All 12 of them are uniquely brilliant in their own way. They all have things that they are good at that none of the other signs can even come close to their ability to do those things. And then they all have their own shadow side. They all have their challenges and the things that they are not good at. And that, you know, like, if you find yourself in a situation where you need that skill that sign is bad at, then flip into one of your other 12 zodiac archetypes and find an energy that does work well for you in the situation that you're facing. So that's the cool thing about acknowledging and accepting that you have all 12 of them within you, is because they're all good at different stuff. And as you go through life, there's going to be situations where each of them would do well to have its own time to shine. You know, there's a lot of hate out there towards like different signs. And if you really look, all the signs are getting it, some of them more than others, but all of them are the object of someone's irritation. And this could be like a whole thing into shadow work. We're not going to let it be, but just briefly, as you study shadow work, you understand that other people are only ever a reflection for ourselves. So if there is a particular zodiac sign that does get under your skin, the first step I would do if I was going to look at your chart with you is to look at that sign in your natal chart wheel and see what do you have going on there, because maybe that's a tender spot for you already It's not about this other person who's doing what they're doing. They're reminding you of something that you're already carrying. So it's always good to flip it back around on yourself and see how you can take ownership of the emotions that are coming up if there's a sign that rubs you the wrong way. Okay, so within the natal chart, the little hieroglyphics, the little symbols that go around the outside of the wheel, those on the very outside was the signs, and on the inside of that were all of these other symbols that are your personal natal chart, natal meaning when you were born. And all of those symbols were the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, all of these planets and luminaries and comets and asteroids. When you get into advanced chart pulling, you can put like a million, like literally 30,000 asteroids or something like that, that you can add to your natal chart. So it's really fun to play around with all of that. A basic natal chart has about 10 of these included. And then if you want to get crazy and pull some other ones, you definitely can. But as you look at all of these different symbols around your natal chart and like all these planets, for example, every single one of them has their own energetic pull and influence. So just like people have different personalities, these planets basically have different personalities. As you see them, like the sun is obviously over here on this side, and then they get further and further away from the sun. Well, we're all orbiting the sun, so the further away something is from the sun, the longer its trip around the sun lasts. Like Earth, we go around the sun once a year, and I'm pretty sure we built it that way on purpose because that was how we were measuring time. So it takes the Earth once a year. So you can think about that pretty closely. Like here it takes once a year. Venus and Mercury, they're about the same. And then you get to Mars and it takes 2 years to go around the sun. And then you get to Jupiter and it takes 12 years to go around the sun, a year per sign. Saturn takes 29 years, 29 and a half, I think. Uranus is 84 years to get around the sun. Neptune, I'm not entirely sure. It's getting up there though. And then Pluto is 245, I want to say. So yeah, they each move at their own speed, and their speed is part of what gives them their personality. Like Mercury, for example, is the fastest moving planet, and it is the planet for intellect and the clarity of your mind and the speed with which you think and connect dots and put together information that you've gathered, and just all things to do with your intellect and your curiosity and your logical brain. So it's moving the fastest. And especially when you look at your Mercury, you can really start to understand the state of your mind, and just its natural environment. You know, all of us have a different placement for our Mercury, and it does set us up to be different inside our own minds. Yeah. So the takeaway here, there's a lot of different things you can add to your natal chart, and each one of them is going to kind of peel the onion a little bit more as far as like a different side of your personality. Okay, so now we are going to actually get into the big three: the sun, the moon, and the rising sign. So real quick before I talk about what the sun represents in the chart, this is on the chart up here as an example. We see that this symbol is the same one here listed for the sun, and we see this, the sun is here in this symbol, whatever that means, but it lists it here for us, that is 19 degrees Libra. So that is where we would just type into Google sun in Libra. And we also, this is getting a little bit more advanced, but the houses are on there as well. There are those triangle chunks that if you know the time that you were born, you get your rising sign and the houses added to your chart. And around the center, usually, it shows you which house is which. And so this is the 11th house. The sun is here in this triangle chunk. So we would also want to know about the sun in the 11th house. So what does the sun actually represent in the natal chart? It is your fuel. So it's what makes you shine. It's like literally your solar nature. Think about the sun. It puts off warmth, it puts off light. Um, that is our sun sign. That side of our personality, it makes us feel alive. It makes us feel like a unique individual that is like divinely supposed to be here. It's our individuality and an expression of our highest self. So that is obviously a piece of our chart that we want to understand really well, the energy that goes along with that. But it's also something that we grow into over time. So learning about the sun sign, and this was especially true for me, I'm a Gemini, which by nature is, having multiple personalities. But I also like just didn't really resonate with a lot of the different pieces about Gemini. Like I'm very introverted. I'm shy. I wouldn't call myself a social butterfly unless I'm very drunk. So it is interesting to know that you do grow into your sun sign as you age, that as we become more comfortable in ourselves and in our personality and in our authenticity, we more naturally exhibit the sun sign energy that we're carrying. So if it doesn't immediately resonate, that's one piece that to just keep in mind and see if there are pieces of it that resonate and if it doesn't change over time. Not that our personality changes, but we're able to see ourselves more clearly as we age, I think, as we get more away from what other people are expecting of us and we allow ourselves to guide the ship ourselves. Um, that would be how we would change and more grow into our sun sign. So the moon sign, another example. So in this case, this is the moon, and we know that because it's listed in the table as the moon for that symbol. And then again, you don't need to know what this means. You can just read across on this table, and we know that that is at 10 degrees Taurus. So then we can Google moon in Taurus. We also can look at the chart here and see that it's in the first house. So we would also look at moon in the first house. Real quick on the degrees, you don't really need to focus a whole lot on the degrees. A couple things about them though, as you get further into your research and peeling the onion, there are such things as critical degrees and other degrees that are said to have specific meaning. So the critical degrees are 0 degrees and 29, and 0 being a very pure place on that energetic spectrum, and 29 being kind of a masterful, complex, multifaceted expression of that energy. And they both serve a different purpose. So if you have planets at 0 degrees or 29 degrees, that does come up, being critical degrees. The other thing that I want to address real quick is cusps. So, there are cusps it makes me laugh because it's one of those heavily debated topics in astrology and in the forums and everything that you see. And I'm gonna say that I used to believe in cusps, and I was sold because I was born June 19th. So my sun is at 28 degrees Gemini. So right on the cusp between Gemini and Cancer. And I didn't resonate with Gemini wholeheartedly. So the idea of a cusp made a lot of sense to me because Cancer is very introverted and quiet and more emotionally sensitive and on and on. So I really thought like, yeah, I'm a Gemini Cancer cusp. That's what makes sense. Then I got to know more about my entire natal chart, and I would say now that I don't really believe in cusps for a couple of reasons. One, I think the 12 zodiac signs, they blend into each other anyway. When you really look at them deep down, you can see how they happen one right after the other. Like it just makes sense as an evolution of energy. to start with Aries and work your way around and end in Pisces. It just makes sense. So, you know, we could spend a whole video talking just about that. But the other piece that helped me, you know, kind of shift my beliefs around cusps was getting to know the rest of my natal chart and finding things like my Leo moon that definitely gives you emotional sensitivity. And then I got a little bit further in and I learned about progressions. And without getting too far into it, basically my son progressed at 2 years old into Cancer. So for the last 30 years, I've been living the progression of a Cancer sun. So there's a lot of different explanations around why that felt so valid to me at first. But as I got deeper into it, there were a lot of reasons why I don't believe in cusps. So if you have a planet at, you know, 0 degrees in 1 minute, or you have a planet at 29 degrees in 59 minutes, like right on the edge, I would still give it to the sign that it's in, because I think you timed your birth down to the minute and you meant very much for that to land where it did. So that would be the sign that I would start with, rather than thinking like I'm half this one and half this one because I landed on the border. So that's just my 2 cents. As always, astrology is a lot about how good is your bullshit meter, because really we each get to decide for ourselves what makes sense to us and what we want to believe and how much what we're reading resonates with us. So, you know, this video not excluded, but if something doesn't resonate, just close out of it. Just find something else to read, because there's enough different perspectives out there that surely we can all find one that feels good to us. So that's my goal always, and I hope it's yours too. So that's a big old intro on moon signs and houses. So to get into what does the moon represent? So our sun is how we shine. It's how we put ourselves out into the world and we come alive. Our moon sign is more our inside personality. If you think about it like how other people would experience our energy, um, that was another thing that, like, whenever I would tell somebody that I was a Gemini, they could never believe it because I don't look like a Gemini on the outside. When you meet me in person, that is. So yeah, and as you get to know someone more and more and more, eventually we get to see their moon sign. So that's an energy usually that is reserved on the inside, and it is how we process our emotions. It's the type of things that prick and poke at our emotions. It's the places where we're sensitive. It's how we recharge. It's our gas tank. So if we're feeling empty or drained, or like we have spent everything that we are carrying and we have nothing left to offer, typically indulging in your moon sign and nurturing that energy is how you can fill your gas tank back up. Another comparison I've read is that the moon sign represents your inner child, but also your inner mother. So not necessarily your ability to mother other people, although that would definitely be included. I'm more talking about your inner mother, of you being able to mother yourself. So to soothe yourself, to understand yourself, to ease your own anxieties and your own sensitivities, and to help walk yourself through any emotional periods that you might have. There's nothing wrong with going outside of yourself to get help with any of that, but our moon sign can also point us in the right direction of how to be there for ourselves. So looking at your moon sign, it is not something that we grow into necessarily. It's more, it's there off the bat. It's very much our comfort zone. It's also said to point towards like our past karma, and our past lives and where we've been previously as a soul, and our comfort zone. So the comfort zone piece is a lot why it helps recharge your batteries if you're feeling spent. I was going to say something else around moon sign. I'm pretty sure it's gone though. So that's just going to be all I have about that. Okay, the last piece of the big three is the rising sign, aka the AC, aka the ascendant. So yes, there are lots of names for this one, and rising sign is by far the most common, and nowhere on, at least astro.com, nowhere on their output do they call it a rising sign. So even just this piece, you have to know what you're looking for. So it's the AC line, and for every single natal chart, the AC line is exactly straight across the horizon of your chart. That's true for everybody. The AC always points to the left side of your chart, and it always is the beginning of the first house. So everybody's first house is located right there, and it goes around the wheel from there, and the 12th house up here is always on top of the rising sign. So I remember when I was very first learning natal charts, I asked Melissa over and over and over again, is this true for me or is this true for everybody? And so yes, this is one of those pieces that like everybody's chart, the houses and the rising sign, it's all laid on top exactly the same. The piece that moves are the zodiac signs on the outside. So based on the time that you were born that day, they rotate like this. So that means that it changes once every 2 hours, I believe. So if somebody was born the exact same day in the exact same place as you, but you were born 4 hours later, you have two different rising signs. So that's another place where, we're going to talk about what it actually represents, but that's another way where we're not just our sun sign, and you can't really just judge somebody based on their sun sign because we all have all of these different facets to our personality. So the rising sign, what does that represent? So this is another one, kind of like the moon sign, that is very unconscious to us. And it's what makes it most interesting to me. This is probably one of the ones when I very first started learning my natal chart, I did not resonate with my rising sign. I was actually a little bit irritated about what it was because it was boring and I didn't like it. So I just kind of ignored it for a good long while. And it was one of those pieces that I slowly eventually came around to. And now I love it. It's like one of my favorite pieces about my natal chart. But it took some doing to like really connect to it emotionally. And that is, I think, because it's so unconscious. It's one of those things where we do it without even thinking about it. It's just how we put ourselves out there in a new social situation or a new circumstance of any kind, really. When we approach new things in life, this is the energy through which we do that. So it can say a lot about how you start things, how you meet friends, how you start new relationships. It can tell us a lot about that general side of your life. This is more of an analogy, a metaphor. I try to understand the difference and I don't, but it's one of those. And this is kind of tying all three of these together, the sun, the moon, and the rising. So the rising sign is a vehicle, and it can be whatever you like, as far as like how you picture your vehicle in your mind. But the energy that rising sign is pointing to, so like mine's Taurus. Taurus rising, that's my vehicle. It is what it is. The time of my birth gave me a Taurus rising, so that's what it is. And now that vehicle doesn't just go places all by itself, right? Like a vehicle, unless it's like one of those fancy future vehicles, it mostly just sits in your garage until someone gets in it and starts it and drives it somewhere. And so your sun sign is who gets in it and starts it and drives it somewhere and decides where that somewhere is going to be. So yes, the Taurus is how you would approach something, but the sun sign is still calling the shots. It's still deciding what is it that you actually want to do, because there's a million different options out there. A million different locations you could go, and your sun sign gets to decide what would be most satisfying to you personally and your individuality. And then we add in the moon sign piece, and that is the gas gauge that exists on the dashboard. So it shows you all the time how much gas is in your tank. And no big deal. If the tank is low or empty, you just need to put some in. And the trick is to keep everything in balance such that you don't ever run out of gas so that you're just stranded by the side of the road. Because that is quite literally what happens. When we run out of gas as humans, as individuals, we break down, we have snaps, and we have emotional outbursts, and we have all kinds of destructive behavior. And all of it is just a big scream for, my tank is empty. I need gas. I need help. I need energy. I need my needs to be met, and they're not. And so, yeah, keeping an eye on the gas gauge lets you eventually meet your destination, wherever it is that your sun sign wants to go. So you think about like your soul's purpose, your soul's reason for coming forward and being you in this life at this time. Um, we can't ever just understand ourselves as one piece. We aren't just our sun sign, because our sun sign is just standing in a spot hanging out, right? Like it's the rising sign that's actually the vehicle that lets us start cruising around and doing cool stuff. And it's our moon sign that contributes by adding the fuel that we need to get around and do what we came here to do. So the trick is to understand them all, one bite at a time, one Google at a time. And it takes some time to read it all and to wrap your mind around it. And like I said, I mean, I think the best thing you can do is understand that it's not going to happen overnight. It is a fun hobby to have for an extended period of time. And it points us in an awesome direction as far as enhancing our self-awareness. And through that, hopefully, our self-acceptance and self-love, and honoring the authentic individual that we came here to be. So there's lots of different pieces to who that is. And the natal chart is a tool for understanding how do we bring it all together and have it work with each other versus against each other. So I'll wrap up with this. Like I said, I offer sessions like this where we come together over Zoom and unpack the natal chart together, one piece at a time, having conversations about the unique placement and the energy that that brings into your life and your personality. The goal being to get you to energetically connect with each piece of your natal chart so that, as you go through day to day and you see yourself behaving a certain way, you're like, yep, that's my Leo moon freaking out again. Or, oh yeah, there's my Mercury in Gemini, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're able to understand how your personality can be so multifaceted, and to honor that you're all of those things, like, I know for me, as I looked at my natal chart, it did prompt a deeper level of shadow work, because I found pieces there that did resonate with things that I had rejected about myself a long time ago. And that I've been telling the story of, like, one specific example is my sensitivity, that I need to grow a thicker skin and I need to figure out how to be less sensitive. And through learning my natal chart, I am pretty positive that I intended to be this sensitive and to go through life creating the ripple effects that result from me being that sensitive. And sometimes those ripple effects are beautiful, and sometimes they splash back at me in ways that I wish they wouldn't. But I think it's all part of my unique energy coming forward to do what I came here to do. And my natal chart helped me to see that. So that's the goal of these sessions. So it's a 2-month engagement every other week. So that's 4 Zoom sessions. The 2 options are with support and without support. And support looks like I use WhatsApp or Voxer, whatever the person's more comfortable with, to do voice support or text support or whatever the person is looking for in between those 2 weeks sessions. so that as the aha moments come and as the onion gets peeled and the layers are coming off of it and we're going through the opening up and the acknowledging what's in there and coming to face with that authentic self, so that I can be there to help and witness and support and just energetically share that space and that place on your journey for a short amount of time. And that way, 2 months, I mean, 4 Zoom sessions probably isn't enough to do the whole chart, but in that time, I'm also definitely a teach Amanda Fish kind of guy. So you learn a lot of tools about how to unpack the natal chart. So at any point, if you're comfortable going at it alone from here on out, my goal as a coach or a spiritual reflector is to give people tools that help them to be self-sufficient, help them to go forward and do what they came here to do. I'm all about it. That is everything. So I thank you so much. I am so glad that you were here to take in this information. If there's anything else that I can do for you, my contact information, you can reach me at owningauthenticity@gmail.com. Yeah. So Natasha has a question. If you don't know the time you were born, can you still utilize the other pieces of your natal chart? Yes, you absolutely can. Basically, there just won't be a rising sign, there won't be the houses, but you can still see all the planets, the sun, the moon, and what signs they were in, and then how each of them are talking to each other, which is another big piece. That's all those crazy lines in the middle, they're called aspects. That's the conversation between your placements, which is just as important as where each of the placements are individually. So I mean, yes, you are losing kind of that top layer of data if you don't know the time that you were born, but there's still a ton there that is absolutely worth digging into. And this is also reminding me that I also, another free way that you can learn about your natal chart is through my podcast, Astro Lessons. So there are about 17 or 18 episodes on there. The episodes range from 5 to 20 minutes per topic, and the topics are individual pieces about astrology and natal charts and really breaking it down one bite-sized piece at a time. And you reminded me because one of the episodes is called What If I Don't Know My Birth Time? And so I spend a few minutes talking through that you can still get a lot out of it. And there's something called birth time rectification, which I go into in that episode as well. So if you're interested, I'll link that in the description also. Natasha, any other question? I'm so glad you were here. For those of you who tried to attend this event yesterday, I am so sorry. There was some kind of divine intervention that my brain totally did it wrong and put the meetup in the Zoom for yesterday and on my calendar for today. So here I am today to do my event that was supposed to be yesterday. So if you're watching the recording, thank you for trying to attend yesterday. I appreciate you. And there will be more of these Astro Beginner events in the future. So I look forward to seeing you there. I think that's all I got. Okay, bye.